The first time we heard about the academy, I was on a summer camp in Louisiana. We brought a few boys up, leaving with the Boy Scouts of America, so we found you guys once we left, and we went over to the TFP Call to Chivalry camp. And that's when we kind of discovered that there is an academy connected to the organization.
And what stood out about the academy? How was it different from other schools?
Well, what stood out for me the first time that I saw the academy students was at the very first TFP National Conference that we came to in 2013. And I was very impressed by the young men that were helping to serve, and our interactions with them. They were some of the most polite young men that we had ever met. Just the ability to have good conversation and to tell us about, their experience and how much they enjoyed being part of the academy. It was very edifying, and it was something that you admired, you wanted for your own children, and at that time my son was about their age. So it's like, wow, this would be something wonderful for our son. And that's when we started to discuss the possibility of sending our son to the academy.
There was also a lot of joy within the boys. You can see they were getting along. Not only were they well structured and dressed and mannered, but they were enjoying themselves. They were just being kids. And I saw that, and my son immediately had an attraction to it. So it was difficult in the beginning, obviously, because you think, okay, that's nice for somebody else's kid. But, we're not sure yet. So it was a very, because it's the first introductory. So, but.
Yeah, and I'll also add, there was something about these young men that you saw, like virtue. There was piety, and you also perceived a level of innocence that you don't see out in the world for young men, young teens that age. It was just very rare. And, as a Catholic mom trying to, was homeschooling our son at the time. We were homeschooling, and, I've always wanted to instill in him, that desire for sainthood, for holiness, to grow into a man of God. And we saw that in the young men at the academy. So it was, what was there not to love?
And how much did the Catholic faith have to do with your decision? Because it was a tough decision that your son was traveling away from home. And how much of that decision was rooted in the faith?
Well, for me, it was everything, because my wife Ruby was more on the page than I was at first, because not only is my only child, my only son, so it was very difficult to even consider him going to a school that was, farther away or whatnot. So I definitely had to rely on the faith to make that jump. That was a huge decision for me. So I noticed my son doing a little like rosary groups and clubs, and he started really shining through Our Lady. I realized that he was starting to do after we came back from the camp, the consecration to Our Lady. And I started realizing, well, it's not my decision, it's his decision, because he's already talked to Our Lady and she's kind of guided him to this. So I had to lean totally on my faith, because if it was my natural ability, I would have had him, oh no, he's going to run my company, he's going to be with me. We have a great parish here nearby, we have a great community. So yeah, I had to really rely on my faith on that one.
Yeah, it had everything to do with my faith. It was hard because he was our only child, and we would go to daily mass together. We were always together, and so letting him go, I knew there was that natural aspect of going to miss him, but at the same time, I knew that it was, in my heart, I knew it was God's will, that Our Lady was guiding. I was praying a lot for his vocation and also for where she wanted, his education to go. And she was leading us very clearly towards the academy. So as hard as it was, we know that we made the right decision. It was the best decision I believe that we've ever made as parents was to send our son to the academy.
I agree with that totally.
And how was the interaction with the staff and the headmaster? Did they keep you informed? Was the process of enrolling him and all that, was that pretty easy or was it difficult?
It was very easy. I would say that we fell in love with all the staff. They've become like family.
Well, now, and even then, so knowing, that probably made it the easiest transition, because the hard part was letting him go. The easy part was immediately it felt like we had an extended family. So that made it the easiest route. You know, there's going to be a lot of more difficult leading up to it than it is to feel comfortable and who they're going with. Because a lot of, with the homeschool community, being an Italian father, you know, I'm not going to release my son to your teachings. I don't, you know, I know these gentlemen, they're great, but, you know, that's something you still in your heart want to have control over. But once you get to know the members and the teacher and the headmaster, Mr. Ted, I mean, you obviously see, well, you know, if I am not that educated in my faith, I would like to, obviously I'm not as knowledgeable as a TFP member. So here I am, one man teaching my son what I have, my ability. And then there's a dozen that are way more educated than me that can really guide him to where he needs to be. And I always say, if I'm a doctor, they're the surgeons. I need to send him to them. So that was the easiest part of it, is to release him under the guidance of the TFP and the teachers there.
Was there a specific moment that confirmed your decision, like, okay, that's it, it's going to happen?
I know mine, but you can go start with yours.
Well, I think our son, I wanted him to go, but I wanted him to go more, you know. And he went on a caravan. And he called us before he even arrived home, and he said, Mom, Dad, I would like to go to the academy. I really want to go. And that, we had been discerning for a little bit. He had been praying about it, and we were praying about it. And I knew at that moment that he was going. Dominic was a little bit more hesitant at first. But in my heart, I knew Our Lady was going to take care of everything, and that he, in the end,
mine was, I submitted to Our Lady. I permitted him to go, but I still wasn't sure. You know, as a father, you don't know if you make the right decisions or not. So I'm a businessman, and you guys do, the TFP does a particular skit, and it's called The 4 Chairs. So there I am, and I'm still having a little bit of trouble with it, and you know, I'm like, okay, well, you know, maybe the school will be good for a little while, and then, you know, he'll come home and run my business. You know, I'm always thinking about that. So here I am, I'm watching The 3 Chairs, and what they do is they put on a particular skit where the first chair is a very old medieval-looking chair, and the medieval knight comes out, and he's a Deus Vult, and he puts up the sword, he says, God wills it, and he sits down, and it's very, very beautiful. Then there's the Renaissance man, and then it moves over to the businessman. And I was like, oh, here comes a businessman. And that one's kind of upbeat, and it's weird, you know. It's like the 20s or the roaring 40s or whatever that area is, that they were doing the stock market exchange and all that. And who comes out? My son, dressed as a businessman, with like a fake cigarette, a prop.
He's
yeah, in the skit. He was he was playing the role of the businessman. And he comes out with the prop, and the prop's like this cigarette and the fedora hat, and he's like, comes out, my stock rose 100 points today or whatever, and he's all, they show him, and as they describe the modern man, and there's still some value to him, but he's more concerned, he doesn't have his eyes fixed on our Lord anymore, he's more into worrying about the material things. And the stress was involved in the description of the man, and I'm like, this is what I inspired my son to be. But yet I want him to be that first chair. And who's that first chair? That first chair are these young men that I just met, the teachers that are teaching him, the TFP members. That's who I inspire him to be now. So that was an immediate grace. It was an immediate flash. I said, after that point, I slept very well every night. So that was my, for sure, I made the right decision.
The last question is, for the parents that are considering or interested in the academy, what would you say to them, maybe to encourage them to check it out or visit the academy?
I highly recommend. I believe there's no other school not just in this country, possibly on this earth, that's better than the St. Louis de Montfort Academy. I have absolutely no regrets at all. I feel like it's one of the pearls of great price, that you want to let everybody else know, like, this is an amazing opportunity for your sons, for our sons. It's what gives me hope for the future of our Catholic faith, our Catholic Church, the formation that they receive there it's definitely guided by Our Lady and the angels, our Lord. So I would challenge anyone to find a better formation than the St. Louis de Montfort Academy. I really believe
I like that challenge. It's true. Yeah, it is true. And then I typically do talk to a lot of parents about this, just because I run an organization in Florida called the Troop St. George, and what we do is, we help them out. We get into the summer camps, and we go to all the chivalry camps, and then when the parents do ask, I let them, of course, consider it themselves. I don't want to push anybody into anything, and if it doesn't work for them, it's not for everybody. I get it, but it should be for everybody. And so basically what I tell them is it shows them independence. It gives them a structured day, not just as a man, but a Catholic man. You wake up, you do your prayers, you make your bed, you wash your own clothes. I mean, it's so independent at such a young age. And people think, well, I'm going to keep my kid till they're 20-something years old. And back in the days, they were on their own very young, and that's what the TFP does. It teaches a 13-year-old to be a man without skipping the joy of being a child. It's just maturity, but as a child. And the education that they get is, the only difficult part about it is when they come home, you better be ready to hold up your conversations to an elevated area of the faith, because they learn so much. But I would definitely tell everybody it is. And then on a more practical note, as a father, and of course having, us, we have the small family, but we know the big families. In a practical note, you don't realize the cost. The cost is very effective compared to a lot of places. And that's not the reason why you should send your child there, is because you want to realize that these men are not here for profit. They are here to give your children a Catholic education and inspire to be somebody of a future leader of the church.